Thank you very much. And actually, that's the first time someone called me founder. I'm so pleased. I am a freelancer, and I usually say, like, I could call myself CEO, but I just call me developer. Well, anyway, welcome to my talk, Permit 838, or Passierschein A38 in German, or how to build accessible forms in Angular. Thanks for the introduction. It's about Asterix and Obelix and about the challenge and the fight against bureaucracy. This is what the instructions for the Permit A38 looked like in the cartoon. Do you remember what was the solution or how two of them managed to obtain a permit? Yeah, they invented a new permit, A39. So I hope today we will also have a look at our solution, A39, maybe something else, and we'll conquer this challenge. But first of all, I hate forms. Why? Well, because of the variety and complexity of the requirements. First of all, you have radio buttons, checkboxes, text fields, selects, progress bars. You have info buttons just in between. And you have some custom components that you have to style yourself or some other components. Well, anyway, it's a lot and it's complex, but that's just one problem. There is another one. It's just little guidance and a lot of opinion. And that's hard. So by the end of the day, I hope you will hate forms too. Well, I'm kidding. By the end of the day, I hope at least that you will also know the requirements. By the way, I have to start with a disappointment. This is not an AI talk. This is not a drill. Why? Thank you. Well, because the state of AI as of now is as follows. If you prompt some forms, you will probably get some barriers or some issues in the code that will be generated. So you have to prompt accordingly. So you have to add accessibility requirements. And for that, you have to know what are the requirements. And that's the talk. So before I start with the contents, let me briefly introduce myself by filling in the form. I just could add that I'm a Google developer expert in Angular, developer, I already mentioned, workshop trainer. I finished a book, and now we can start. What are the requirements? Today, I'm going to focus on WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And on the next slide, there's like the overall structure of it. If you don't see particular numbers, it doesn't matter because it's more of the feeling or overview. It is based, those guidelines are based on or consist of 4 principles. It's perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And that's exactly how our websites should be. This standard is a basis for a lot of national legislations. And for example, the European Accessibility Act, and for Germany, it's Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz. And they require the criteria on the level A and AA. And if you ask yourself, what are the darker spots on the slide? That's the criteria that I'm going to cover today. So the good news is almost the half of the legal requirements. The bad news is it's the half of the legal requirements. So there's still even more. I picked some that are particularly relevant for the forms, and we'll start with the first 2. Meaningful sequence and focus order. The numbers that you see on the slide correspond to the numbers of the criteria. So after the talk, you can find them in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Meaningful sequence, focus order, means that your elements have to be focused in the sequence of the elements should be logical, should maintain its meaning and be intuitive. And ideally, the visual order should correspond the order in your code, because the keyword focus follows the sequence of the elements in your code. That's a requirement. But again, I mentioned there's a lot of opinion. And here's one recommendation. You might have 2 columns in your form. However, some people use magnification or magnifiers, and they will zoom in. It's not the same as responsiveness. They will not increase like percentage they will just see part of the screen. So they will magnify part of it, and they might overlook the second column. So it's not a requirement per se, but it might be the case that your users would miss the right part or the left part of your form. Next one. It's not only that the focus has to be logical or meaningful, it has to be visible. And for that, you have to style your outline and never, never, never use none. What you can do, you can use box shadow additionally, and you could set your outline to transparent so that you have a fallback solution for example, high contrast mode. But never, never use none, please. Next one. It's not only visible, but also not obscured. One of the typical use cases for that is the navigation and breadcrumbs, which are just below the navigation, and then you have the selects or drop-downs, and then you cover it. And for forms, exactly what you see on the slide, you have a select, which opens, and if you use custom elements, please make sure that the select closes and does not cover any other focusable elements. If you use native ones, if you use Angular material, you're safe. But if you implement your own from scratch, well, you should take care of it. The next one, maybe more well-known, it's info and relationship. And you have to make sure that your inputs and labels are programmatically connected. What does it mean? You could nest your inputs into your labels, but there is a better solution, and that's the explicit connection. For the explicit connection, you need the ID and the for attribute, and it's better because it works more stable with voice recognition. So if you have a choice, please use the explicit one. Next one, if you squash your website to 320 pixel, it should not scroll in both directions. Why? Because people with for example, tremor might have hard time scrolling up and down or to the left and to the right at the same time, staying on the same line in your text. So it's really hard. But it's also basic responsibility in responsiveness. So it's actually something that I'm sure you're already doing. Next one. Contrast, and it's actually a criterion which is not only required for your forms, but also for everything, all contents of a website. For the text, you might have already heard, it's 4.5 to 1. The number comes from a form, but you can use tools. There are a lot of tools that will calculate that for you. For bigger texts, like up to starting from 18 pixel or bold text is 3 to 1, and that's maybe also not new for you. However, what often is forgotten that not text content is also has to have enough contrast. Thank you. What are the common pitfalls? First of all, this cross button that you see on the slide close to the input field, that's an interactive element, and it's important that our users see our interactive elements. The same goes for the border around our input fields. It has to be 3 to 1, otherwise they will be missed. And that's what I observe from time to time as a mistake or a failure. By the way, do not trust your own eyes, and I want to prove this with a small exercise. On the slide you see a sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. On the left side, it's 1 to 1, so white on white. On the left side, on the right side, it's 21 to 1. The maximum contrast is black on white. What do you think, what letter is 4.5 to 1? Any volunteers? O, like in over, okay. T, the, over the lazy dog. Okay, thank you. I will resolve it. And it's V, so it's close. But what I mean to say, don't trust your eyes, just use tools for that, and then you're safe. Next one, keyboard. Again, something which is valid for the whole contents. All the functionality of your website has to be accessible. It is so important that there's even an extra requirement, which is no keyboard trap, saying that if I'm able to navigate via keyboard to some place, then I have to be able to navigate away from this place using keyboard. And the typical pitfall in forms is rich text editors. Imagine I am on the list and I hit the tab button. Instead of going to the next element, I will probably just move the text. So for this, you have to come up with some solution how to escape providing. Maybe shortcuts, maybe anything else. Next one. On focus or on input. Also lesser known criteria saying that whenever the users just input something or focus some element, we should not change the context. What does it mean? Changing context is something like opening a new window, a new tab, shifting the focus to some other part of the website, which is not related to the current issue. That confuses our users, and one of the gray zones is the two-factor authentication if I get the SMS code and I have to input it. And many websites directly redirect me to the next page. Some experts say it's okay because the user knows, and that's actually my intention, to get logged in to see the results or the contents. On the other hand, I'm not expecting to be redirected just after entering something. I would rather prefer to hit submit or whatever, go, continue before some action happens. However, not everything is change of context. Sometimes it's the change of content. So if the user fills in some form and you have follow-up questions that belong to the same topic, then it's fine because that's the content, not the context that we change. Next one, my favorite and the resource for the majority of accessibility issues, label and name. Well, and you see, that's for the first time that I have ARIA on my slide. It's impossible to talk about accessibility without mentioning ARIA. It stands for Accessible Reach Internet Applications, and that's a specification or a set of roles and attributes that you can add to your HTML if you're missing semantic, and only if you cannot implement this with HTML. So we have here a situation with a paragraph which says name 1, and then we have a link. And in this link, we have ARIA labeled by, ARIA label, title. We have the inner text. And now I have a question to you. What do you think a screen reader would announce? Everything? Which name? P-name. Yeah, that's the idea. Okay, so the solution is exactly name 1, and that's what is referenced by the ID, because there is a hierarchy of methods how to give the so-called accessible name to our elements. And the accessible name is what the assistive technologies will announce. In this case, the problem is the visible name of our link is name 4, and assistive technologies know it as name 1. The problem is not only all screen reader users are blind. There are some people that prefer to listen to text because they have maybe trouble reading. But also voice recognition users would have trouble requesting or clicking this link because voice recognition doesn't know about name 4. So when you have a button or a link with the visible text, just don't do anything. You don't need ARIA. Just don't overwrite what is already accessible. Next one, we already talked about the accessible name, and when you implement accessible components on your own, you have to provide the correct role and make sure the value is communicated, etc. And that's where I invite you to get inspired by other libraries and resources. First of all, I would like to recommend the Design System of UK. It's open source, and it's designed with accessibility in heart or at heart. The same goes for Colibri. That's an equivalent for Germany. That's a component library which is used by the websites of the German government. Then we have a checklist, which this is not the place where you find some code examples, but here you would find different use cases. For example, if you want to implement a toolbar, you would find some examples, like some visual examples, but also the list of requirements for this particular use case. So next time you have to implement a new feature, you can go to this website and look at the list of requirements for this feature. Quite useful. Next one is the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide, and that's the official website of ARIA working group. And I was super excited when I discovered it because, well, that's super official. If they tell me that this is the way to go, then I'm safe. However, I have to warn you, this website showcases the usage of ARIA. It's not the best solution, it's the showcase for ARIA. Sometimes you are better off using semantic HTML, for example, with a button. Don't use ARIA to implement a button. You have a button in HTML. Nevertheless, I'm visiting this website quite often for the requirements. If I go, for example, to tabs, I will get the description of the keyboard interaction. And then if I go into specific use cases, I will even get some ARIA roles that I might need for this implementation and the keyboard as well. So still quite useful, but you have to know how to implement, well, you have to assess on your own if there is more semantic solution or more HTML solution for that. The last but not the least is, and I'm happy to announce that it's Angular ARIA. It's a new package which provides the headless UI components. And actually, it's worth it. And the whole talk, and I will probably do it next time, it gives you some utils and directives that you can apply on your components that you can style on your own. So you don't have to use Angular material if you have your own styling, which is hard to combine with Angular material. You can go with Angular ARIA. And now we have tree, we have combo box, we have tabs, we have list box, etc. So there are some use cases which you can already implement with that. Next one, target size. The clickable elements on your website should have at least 24 by 24 pixel clickable area. And for forms, it's especially in the select box because the height of the options is quite often less than 24. So double check if you provide enough click area so that I'm not activating 3 buttons at once with my thumb. And if you have multiple buttons which have the same functionality, then you have to name them consistently. So if you have the function of deletion or removal of some element, don't call it delete and then remove on a different website, on different subsite. Call it the same way. Use a consistent naming. And if you have different functions or different links, then your link names should be also different. So they should indicate different targets. Next one, heading and labels. You have to provide meaningful labels. If you have your login website and you accept emails and username, then tell this. And if you have date, then specify what is this date. Is it the birthday? Is it the starting date for the flight search? Whatever. So be more specific and, well, meaningful. Next one, labels or instructions. Not only that your labels should be meaningful, they should also specify what kind of input you require. Well, the easiest one, just required one. If all the fields are required, it's okay if you just write all the fields are required at the beginning of the form. If you have a mixture, the usual way is to go with a star to save space. Then you have to explain what this star means because it's not really intuitive. But if you have some other requirements, for example, min length, max length, pattern validation, the problem there is that screen readers wouldn't additionally announce this information. You have to provide this in the label, otherwise your users would know what are the limitations of the input. For your inputs, not only humans have to understand what's required, but also the technology behind it. And you can do it best way by providing autocomplete attribute. And if you look up the documentation on that, there's so many values. There's so many use cases that you can have where you already have a value for that. The advantage is autofill function, of course, but maybe in the future screen readers could also provide more support, knowing on the technological level, programmatical level, what's the purpose of this input. And now the users start to fill in the form and errors happen. First thing, you have to identify this error programmatically. What does it mean? Well, first of all, you have to provide ARIA invalid to say that this is an invalid input. Second, you have to display some error message probably, and then you have to connect this error message with the input field. One of the ways to do this at the moment is ARIA described by, and then referring the ID of your message. Small improvement is to do this conditionally. If the message is there, then you refer the ID. If the message is not there because everything is valid, then you refer null, and then there is no false positives with automation tools, etc. Not only we have to identify the error, we have to provide a suggestion or an error message how to fix it. And that's why I meant like there's little guidance and a lot of opinion. In this case, the requirement just says that we have to provide a meaningful suggestion, but no one tells me what's meaningful, what's helpful. So it's up to you and up to UX research and, some business requirements. But even better than displaying some error messages is to prevent errors. And for important transactions where the financial or sensitive data are changed, you have to provide a way to reconfirm and maybe change the data before they're submitted, or to provide a mechanism to revert the changes. Well, the first one is easier. Next one, redundant entry. Whenever the user enters user-specific data within a session, we should not force them to re-enter this data again. We should take it over, maybe pre-fill it if we already know the customer, etc. And one of the classical examples of that is the billing address and the shipping address. So whenever the user already filled in one of these forms, we can take those, copy the data to the other form, pre-fill the data, or just let them use the checkbox if there's identical. Last but not the least, imagine our users are somewhere at the form filling in stuff, and then the session is about to expire, and that's a toast message which we display using JavaScript. Screen reader will announce only the things that are focused at the moment, so blind users might not get this information, and we have to make sure that this information is announced programmatically. For this, we might need live regions. It's again something which comes from ARIA. And here we have another help from the Angular team. It's the live announcer from Angular Material CDK. Again, Angular Material CDK, even if you don't use Angular Material, you can use it because it's headless utilities, directives, etc. that have some technical sugar, provide some help for accessibility. You inject the service, and then you call announce function, and then Angular takes care of the rest, setting up the live region and communicating the information to the screen readers. Here we go. That was the brief overview of the requirements. And now we can come to the demo time. I prepared a little application which has just a couple of forms. And first of all, the reactive forms. I already displayed some of the code examples here. We have ARIA invalid. By the way, in the upcoming versions, we will get rid of the attributes and we'll use it just like a property binding. We have here ARIA described by, which references the error message. We only display the error message if the user has interacted with the form and if the form is invalid. So this is the thing that I already displayed or showed you in the presentation. But I thought with the single-based forms, what is the effect on accessibility? And for that, I implemented a very similar signal-based form. So if I go to the reactive forms you see it, and signal-based form is just almost the same. So I'm not gonna go into much detail how to implement a signal-based forms. We already had some talks on that. Just to know that I created a signal, I created a form, I provided some validation. And here's a difference which I'm quite excited about, is that in my validation, I'm already able to provide the error messages. And this is a syntactical difference which makes my life a bit easier, because when I implement the form and have, like here, multiple error messages which I display depending on the validation rule, then I don't have to check which error it is. I just say, go through all message errors or errors that I have on this field, and for each of these errors, display the corresponding message. So this is something that I had trouble implementing this way in reactive forms, and now in signal-based forms, it's really clean and nice. So how does it work? I have a message field and I have two validators here, required and the min length. So if I go here and type just a couple of words and go next, then I will get exactly the message that I configured in my form. And I combine it or connect it programmatically with my input field by the ARIA described by. And by the way, you can find this information in the accessibility panel. When you go to the elements, styles, computed, and then accessibility, then you will see under computed properties, the accessibility name and the accessibility description of my input field. And that's exactly what screen readers would announce. And in this case, it works. And if I have to refocus it, I guess. Huh? So, yeah, still, please write us a message. I was confused, but there was a label that says accessible name, and then the description is exactly what I list here in my list of possible error messages. So this is something which is new and comes with signal-based forms. The rest is very similar. The syntax is very similar. I still can check for touched. I still can check for invalid. I still get the errors. I still get the status. So all in all, the good news is signal-based forms have no effect on accessibility. They pose no additional trouble, issues, etc. They give us just a bit more easier error handling. And if you already implement your reactive forms accessible, then there will be little to no trouble migrating to signal-based forms and keep them accessible. With that, I'm at the end of my talk, and I'm looking forward to your questions.